Myanmar's military-appointed election commission deputy head has been fatally shot in Yangon by rebels, with the perpetrators identified as the anti-coup People's Defense Forces, fighting for democracy in Myanmar. PDF fighters have continued to target officials perceived to be working with the military junta, which took control of the country after securing power through a coup in 2021. This has led to almost daily killings of low-level officials and devastating bloodshed from the military. This power grab has also prompted more aggression and renewed fighting with ethnic rebels in the country. In today's news, Russia and Germany are in a diplomatic feud, with Russia expelling German diplomats in response to the removal of their embassy staff from Germany. Meanwhile, U.S. Air National Guardsman Jack Teixeira, accused of leaking classified documents, was reportedly posting confidential material in a large chat group months before he was caught. In fighting news, Russia has captured more city blocks in Ukraine and launched missile attacks on Kharkiv, causing damage. Belgorod in Russia is evacuating 17 apartment buildings due to an explosive device found near where a bomb was accidentally dropped by a Russian warplane. In a surprising twist, the son of Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov, Nikolai Peskov, fought alongside the Wagner mercenary force in Ukraine, something he considers his duty. Lastly, Russian fertilizer, previously seized by Latvia, is being shipped to Kenya through the UN World Food Programme, and Ukrainian gas company Naftogaz is discussing projects with ExxonMobil Corp, Halliburton and Chevron. Phew, that's a lot happening in one day. U.S. Embassy staff and their families have been evacuated from Sudan's capital, Khartoum, by U.S. forces due to the ongoing conflict between the Sudanese army and paramilitary rapid support forces, which entered its second week. The U.S. mission in Khartoum has closed indefinitely as a result. Despite this, Washington has no plans to evacuate the estimated 16,000 U.S. citizens in Sudan. Over 150 people from various nations have been evacuated to Saudi Arabia, and foreign nations are preparing for the potential evacuation of thousands more. The UN and foreign states have urged military leaders to honor declared ceasefires, open safe passage for fleeing civilians, and allow the supply of aid. Police in Kenya have exhumed dozens of bodies from shallow graves as part of an investigation into a Christian cult whose members believed they would go to heaven if they starved themselves to death. The cult leader, Paul Mackenzie, has been arrested on charges of cultism and encouraging the parents of 2 boys to starve and suffocate their children to death. Mackenzie has previously been arrested in connection to the deaths of children. The unfolding tragedy has prompted calls for tighter regulation of Kenya's religious organizations. Cults are relatively common in the country, which has a deeply religious society. Tens of thousands of Israelis are protesting against Benjamin Netanyahu's government's plan to overhaul the country's judicial system and weaken the Supreme Court. The move is seen as an attack on the country's system of checks and balances and a threat to democracy by many. Israelis have flooded the streets in protests, forcing Netanyahu to delay the plan to find a compromise, but protesters are undeterred, demanding the overhaul be cancelled altogether. Opposition to the plan is widespread, with thousands of military officers, high-tech business leaders, and the security establishment all against it. Even President Biden has spoken out against the move. Foreign nationals, including embassy staff, aid workers, and students, have begun to evacuate Sudan as the army launches air raids against the rapid support forces during battles in Khartoum. The ongoing fighting has trapped many in the city, with the airport repeatedly targeted, leaving foreigners unable to leave the country. While the Sudanese army has promised to facilitate the evacuation of certain nationals, securing the airport is a top priority for evacuations. However, those on the ground report that the war has been continuous since day one, resulting in the deaths of over 400 people so far. The conflict has opened a dangerous new chapter in Sudan's history, and there are concerns that the violence will only escalate as foreigners try to leave. Sudanese activists have been working to establish committees of medics, nurses, and engineers to help citizens in need amid ongoing conflict. Since fighting erupted between the army and the paramilitary rapid support forces, at least 413 people have been killed. Resistance committees have filled the void left by aid groups by coordinating evacuations for besieged civilians, rehabilitating hospitals, and providing shelter to the displaced. These efforts have boosted their support among the population and maintained social cohesion in the neighborhoods involved. Despite these heroic actions, resistance committees have received little support from political parties and the military. International engagement with these committees could be essential in bringing much-needed aid to the citizens of Sudan. U.S. General Mark Milley discussed the safety of American citizens in Sudan with Sudan's Army Chief General Abdel Fattah al-Burhan, amid possible plans to evacuate the U.S. Embassy in Khartoum. The embassy has been unable to evacuate staff due to the fighting which has killed hundreds, particularly in Khartoum and the west of Sudan. The situation remains uncertain, with sporadic gunfire being heard in different parts of the city. The conflict has made it difficult for other nations and the United Nations to evacuate their citizens and employees. The World Health Organization (WHO) reported that 413 people have been killed and 3,551 wounded in the fighting, with the actual death toll believed to be higher. Fighting in Sudan's capital of Khartoum continues, despite the army announcing a 3-day truce for the Muslim holiday of Eid al-Fitr, dealing a blow to international efforts to end almost a week of hostilities with the Rapid Support Forces (RSF). The fighting has killed hundreds, tipping the country, where a quarter of people rely on food aid, towards a humanitarian disaster. Nations including the US, Japan, South Korea, Germany, and Spain have been unable to evacuate embassy staff, with at least 5 aid workers killed, including 3 from the World Food Program. The fighting has also made it difficult for people to leave their homes and join the thousands fleeing to neighboring Chad. Sudan is currently facing the threat of a prolonged conflict between two generals, Abdel Fattah al-Burhan and Mohammed Hamdan Dagalo, also known as Hemedti. This power struggle has the potential to escalate further, with outside players supporting both sides. To shed light on the situation, journalist Matt Nasht, Khalid Khair, the founding director of Confluence Advisory, and Khalid Madani, associate professor and chair of the African Studies program at McGill University, joined presenter Fali Ba Thibault. Only time will tell how this conflict will affect the future of Sudan. Meanwhile, let's hope these generals don't resolve their issues through an intense game of rock, paper, scissors.